Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says the Red Cross will be allowed to visit the remaining hostages in Gaza. His statements come after Wednesday's landmark agreement between Israel and Hamas for a 4-day ceasefire in Gaza in exchange for 50 Israeli hostages. Hamas, for its part, says 150 Palestinian women and children imprisoned by Israel will also be returned in the deal. Egyptian mediators say the truce is set to start on Thursday at 10 a.m. local time. It brings a hopeful pause to the relentless IDF bombing since October 7th, when Hamas killed more than 1,200 Israelis. Let's hear from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking on Wednesday.
My request with the negotiators to improve the agreement, and it has been done. This combined military and diplomatic effort has enabled us to have the conditions requisite to have the hostages be released, and I think this will also lead to further release of other hostages. The agreement, well, there will not be any assassins released, and the Red Cross will be able to visit our hostages and give them medication. Citizens of Israel, I want to be very clear this evening. This war is going to continue. It is ongoing. We will continue this war up until we reach all our goals, release all hostages, annihilate Hamas, and in post-Hamas, in Gaza, we will not have anyone in power that will be paying terrorists and educate children in a spirit of terrorism. And we will do this throughout the north and the south.
We heard from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu there. For more on these developments, I'd like to now bring in Yossi Mekelberg, Associate Fellow at Chatham House's MENA Programme in London. Yossi, thanks so much for joining us. We finally managed to reach talks of a ceasefire. How exactly have we got to this point?
I think those are actually negotiations that have taken for quite a while. And it has certain separate elements. One is, of course, the release of the hostages, release of Palestinian prisoners, 150 of them, and then, of course, a ceasefire. But this is more opposed than a ceasefire of 4 days. And then Israel also suggested that for every 10 extra additional hostages released, there will be another day of a pause. And this will create, at least for now, a different reality to what we have seen in the last 47 days.
A very violent reality it has been, of course, in Gaza. Can you tell me exactly what we can expect then in terms of the process on the ground to retrieve those hostages and then to do an exchange as we kind of expect? How would that look?
No, the technicality of this, the logistic is quite complicated because they need only tonight the list of the 50 Israelis released. We assume all women and children has been handed to the Israelis. Then they need to find, they are not all in this, we assume, not all in the same place. So they need to gather there and move them to a safe place through some corridor to ensure that they reach the border. All of these are details that negotiated through mediators, whether it's Qatar, Egypt, and the United States, and of course with Hamas and Israel. But it will be interesting to see how it's actually in practice actually does happen. What we know for now that by tomorrow at 10 o'clock, this call it a humanitarian pause or ceasefire will come into effect, and then we'll see if it's what happens next.
Of course, it could be obviously very difficult to maintain any kind of ceasefire from both sides. Who is acting as an ensurer that both Israel and Hamas stick to this agreement?
I think the best insurance of this agreement is both sides are interested in this. Israel obviously is interested in the release of hostages. Hamas is interested in the release of prisoners, and also to give some time to regroup in these 4 days after it has been under intense attack for 47 days. Obviously, the mediators, whether it's again Qatar, Egypt, the United States, other countries in the region, are the guarantors in this kind of an agreement. But I think what makes it a reality, what makes it likely to happen, is because it's the interest of both sides, which is what usually a good sign for any agreement.
I don't suppose you can speak to any previous encounters or historical examples of hostages and any kind of exchange that took place regarding these two entities, Israel and Hamas, what we can maybe expect?
Oh, this is unique. Nothing on this scale has ever happened. The last time something, exchange happened, it was one Israeli soldier, Gilad Shalit, for more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners. Now we are talking about something completely different, incomparable to what happened in the past. We are talking also, again, we don't know exactly the names of the 50 Israelis, but probably you're talking from 10 months old to maybe 80-something years old. Some of them frail. We don't know at what condition, whether they're injured or their health situation. So it's very different, and it all happens after 47 days of war and terrible devastation and destruction and death in Gaza after what happened 7 October in Israel. So I think it's one of these situations that are, unique, and we need to see how it pans out.
Of course, so much psychological trauma to deal with for both those in Gaza and those Israeli hostages who are going to finally come back home. Thank you so much for joining us and for your insights, Yossi Mekelberg. Yossi joining us from Chatham House, where he is an associate fellow at the MENA Programme in London.